Ever feel like you're holding everyone else up at work because your brain just won't cooperate?
Oh, yeah.
I was reading this article in MBN Channel Business Magazine Daily News, and it really got me thinking.
Okay.
It's about this company, Piece of Wellness,
Yeah.
that's doing mental health coaching for companies
Interesting.
and individuals.
So they're taking a more proactive approach to something that's often seen as a reactive need.
Exactly. The article dives into their approach, but it starts with a definition of mental wellness that I found really eye-opening.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about feeling good. It's about having the skills to navigate your own thoughts and emotions, especially when you're interacting with others.
That's a crucial distinction.
Yeah.
Especially in a work setting where stress levels are consistently high, having those skills can make all the difference.
The article actually highlights how workplace stress is a huge concern for employers right now. It's like everyone's looking for solutions beyond the traditional employee assistance program.
And rightfully so. There's a growing understanding that mental well-being is directly linked to productivity and overall job satisfaction. It's not just about feeling good, it's about creating a more engaged and productive workforce.
It's like they say, you can't pour from an empty cup. So how does Piece of Wellness address that? Well, they offer workshops and one-on-one coaching.
What stood out to me about their approach was the focus on practical skills and techniques.
Right.
These aren't just vague self-help seminars, they tackle very specific challenges.
Right. Some of their workshop themes really resonated with me, like managing stress and anxiety, creating healthy boundaries with coworkers.
Wow.
They even have one on avoiding taking things personally,
Oh, yeah.
which, let's be honest, is something we could all use help with from time to time.
Absolutely. And that's what's so compelling about their approach. They're focusing on building skills and providing people with tools to navigate those challenges.
It's like they're saying, look, we all have these struggles, but here's how you can manage them more effectively.
And the article really dives into that practical aspect, especially regarding individual coaching sessions.
Oh, yeah, that's where they get into the nitty-gritty of how our thoughts can either hold us back or set us free.
Right.
They had this really powerful line about our minds being the key to freedom or the lock to a prison cell.
That's a powerful image. It speaks to the potential we all have to shape our own reality.
And they back it up with examples of how people can view the same event in totally different ways. For example, imagine two people going through a stressful work deadline. One might come out feeling defeated, while the other sees it as a valuable learning experience.
That's a perfect illustration of how our mindset and thought patterns play such a crucial role. It's not just about what happens to us, it's about how we choose to perceive and respond to those events.
Which is where Piece of Wellness steps in. They help people develop the skills to reframe those negative thought patterns and cultivate a more empowered perspective.
Precisely. And the article hints at the methods they use, like identifying and challenging those automatic negative thoughts we all have.
It's about recognizing that just because we think something doesn't make it true. We don't have to be prisoners to those negative thought loops.
Exactly. And what I found fascinating was their emphasis on understanding our individual filters.
What do they mean by filters?
Well, they explain it as the unique lens through which we interpret information based on our past experiences and beliefs. It's like how some people naturally see the glass half full while others see it as half empty.
Right.
They're both looking at the same thing, but their perception is influenced by their individual filters.
That's such a helpful way to think about it. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about recognizing that we all have these ingrained patterns of thinking that shape how we experience the world.
And Piece of Wellness provides tools and techniques to help people become more aware of those filters and how they might be influencing their perceptions. It's about gaining more control over how we process information and react to situations.
Okay, so they're not just about positive thinking or ignoring problems. It sounds like they're digging deeper into the underlying thought patterns that drive our behaviors.
Exactly. It's about understanding the why behind our reactions and equipping ourselves with the skills to make conscious choices about how we respond to challenges.
And that brings us to one of the most impactful takeaways for me, this idea that we are not just a product of our circumstances.
Yes, that line really struck a chord with me as well. It's easy to feel trapped by our situations, but this concept reminds us that we have more agency than we often realize.
It's like taking back the power, right? We're not just passive bystanders in our own lives.
Exactly. And that sense of agency is incredibly empowering. It suggests that we can actively shape our experiences and influence our well-being by shifting our perspectives and developing healthier coping mechanisms.
It's about recognizing that we have choices in how we respond, even when things feel tough.
Precisely. And that shift in perspective, that realization that we have more control than we might think, is incredibly liberating. It allows us to move from a place of reactivity to a place of empowered choice.
And isn't that what it's all about? Feeling equipped to handle whatever life throws at us, both at work and in our personal lives.
Absolutely. It's about building that mental resilience and emotional intelligence to navigate the ups and downs with greater awareness and intention.
So it's not about becoming some kind of Zen master who never feels stressed or overwhelmed.
Not at all. It's about recognizing that those feelings are a normal part of life, but that we don't have to be ruled by them. We can learn to manage them more effectively.
Which is precisely what Peace of Wellness aims to help people do.
And what's particularly interesting is how they take these powerful but often abstract concepts and translate them into actionable steps and techniques.
Right. They're bridging the gap between theory and practice, giving people tangible tools to improve their mental well-being.
It's like they're providing a roadmap for navigating the inner workings of our minds.
And who wouldn't want a roadmap for that?
Especially in today's world, where stress and uncertainty are so prevalent, having those navigational tools feels more essential than ever.
Absolutely. So they've got these workshops, they've got one-on-one coaching, all focused on building those mental muscles. But one thing I kept thinking about was how much of this comes down to self-awareness.
You're absolutely right. You can have all the tools in the world, but if you're not aware of your own thought patterns and behaviors, they won't do you much good.
It's like trying to navigate a maze in the dark. You need that light of self-awareness to guide you.
Precisely. And that's something the article touched on as well, the importance of understanding our own internal landscape before we can effectively change it.
So how does Peace of Wellness help people develop that self-awareness?
That's a great question, and it's something we can delve into further. The article highlighted several key techniques they use to promote self-awareness.
On all ears.
One approach that stood out to me was their use of journaling prompts and guided reflections.
Oh, I love that. It's like giving your thoughts a place to land so you can actually examine them.
Exactly. It's about creating space for introspection and encouraging a more mindful approach to our thoughts and feelings.
Because so often we're just rushing through our days, reacting to things without really stopping to think about why we're reacting the way we are.
Exactly. It's like we're on autopilot, letting our subconscious dictate our behaviors. But journaling and reflection can help us hit the pause button and bring those subconscious patterns to the surface.
It's like shining a light into the corners of our minds that we might not normally pay attention to.
Precisely. And that increased awareness is often the first step toward creating lasting change.
Because once you're aware of those patterns, you can start to question them, challenge them, and ultimately choose differently.
Exactly. And that's where the real power of mental wellness lies, in that ability to choose our responses and shape our experiences from a place of awareness and intention.
I love that. It's not about becoming some kind of perfect, emotionless robot.
Yeah. Not at all. It's about embracing our full human experience with all its complexities and challenges, but doing so with greater self-awareness and compassion.
And that sounds like a pretty amazing goal to strive for.
Absolutely. It's a journey, not a destination, but it's a journey worth taking. You know, it's like that old saying, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime.
Right.
Peace of Wellness isn't just offering temporary solutions. They're equipping people with the skills and awareness to navigate their mental well-being for the long haul.
I love that analogy. And it speaks to something that really resonated with me in the article. This idea that we're not just victims of our circumstances. We actually have a lot more control over our thoughts and feelings than we often realize.
Absolutely. The article really emphasized this point, highlighting how our minds can be either the key to freedom or the lock to a prison cell.
That image really struck me too. It's such a powerful way to illustrate the impact our thoughts can have on our experiences.
Right. It suggests that we have a choice. We can either allow our thoughts to trap us in negativity and self-doubt, or we can choose to unlock a more empowered and fulfilling way of being.
And it sounds like Peace of Wellness provides the tools and techniques to help people unlock that freedom.
Exactly. They focus on teaching people how to become more aware of their thoughts, challenge those that are unhelpful, and reframe them in a more positive and constructive light.
Can you give me an example of what that reframing process might look like in a real-life situation?
Sure. Imagine you're feeling overwhelmed by your workload.
Yep.
A common thought pattern might be, I'm never going to get all of this done, I'm going to fail. That's a very disempowering thought that can lead to stress, anxiety, and even procrastination.
I think we've all been there. So How would you help someone reframe that thought using the techniques Piece of Wellness teaches?
Well, the first step is acknowledging and validating that feeling of overwhelm. It's important to meet yourself with compassion and recognize that it's okay to feel overwhelmed sometimes. Everyone does.
That's a good reminder. We often try to suppress or ignore those negative emotions, which never seems to work out well.
Exactly. It's about allowing yourself to feel those feelings without judgment. Then, once you've acknowledged those feelings, you can start to challenge the thoughts associated with them. In this case, the thought is, I'm never going to get all of this done. I'm going to fail.
So how do you challenge a thought like that? It feels pretty true when you're buried in work.
That's where you start to look for evidence that either supports or contradicts the thought. Ask yourself, is it really true that I'll never get all of this done? Have you ever successfully managed a heavy workload before?
Okay, so you're starting to create some distance between yourself and the thought. You're not just accepting it as truth, you're questioning it.
Exactly. And as you start to question it, you might realize that there's actually a lot of evidence to the contrary. You might remember times when you felt overwhelmed, but still managed to complete your tasks successfully. You might also start to see that this thought is rooted in fear and anxiety rather than reality.
That makes sense. We often catastrophize things in our minds, making them seem much bigger and scarier than they actually are.
Precisely. And that's why it's so important to challenge those thoughts and look for evidence to the contrary. Once you start to poke holes in those negative thought patterns, you can begin to reframe them in a more positive and realistic light.
So instead of saying, I'm never going to get all of this done, you might reframe it as, this is a challenging workload, but I've handled challenges like this before. I'm going to break it down into manageable steps and focus on one task at a time.
Exactly. You're acknowledging the challenge while also shifting your perspective to focus on what you can control and the resources you have available to you.
That's such a powerful shift. It's about moving from a place of fear and overwhelm to a place of empowerment and agency.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of cognitive reframing. It allows you to step out of those negative thought loops and choose a more empowering perspective.
Okay, so that's one example. But what about those deeply ingrained beliefs that can be much harder to shift? You know, the ones that stem from childhood experiences or past traumas. Can these techniques really help with those?
That's a great question. While it's important to acknowledge that deep-seated beliefs often require more specialized support and therapy, the principles of self-awareness and cognitive reframing can still be incredibly helpful.
Can you give me an example of how that might look?
Sure. Let's say someone has a core belief that they're not good enough. This belief might stem from early childhood experiences where they felt unseen or unheard.
That's a pretty common belief, unfortunately.
It is, and it can have a profound impact on our lives, influencing everything from our relationships to our careers. Now, using the techniques we've discussed, this person might start by becoming more aware of how this belief shows up in their everyday life. Do they constantly seek validation from others? Do they shy away from challenges or opportunities? Once they've identified how this belief manifests, they can start to challenge it.
So how would you challenge a belief as deeply rooted as I'm not good enough?
It's about recognizing that this belief, like all beliefs, is just a thought. It's not an objective truth. And just because you've believed something for a long time doesn't make it true.
That's a good point. We often mistake our thoughts for facts, especially when we've been thinking them for years or even decades.
Exactly. So the next step is to start gathering evidence that either supports or contradicts this belief. What are your strengths? What are you good at? What have you accomplished in your life? By focusing on your positive qualities and accomplishments, you begin to create a more balanced and realistic self-image.
It's like you're building a case against that negative belief with evidence to the contrary.
Exactly. And the more evidence you gather, the more you start to chip away at the power of that limiting belief.
Right.
It's not about denying the negative experiences that might have contributed to the belief. It's about acknowledging them while also choosing to focus on the positive and empowering aspects of yourself.
So it's not about pretending to be someone you're not or ignoring the challenges you faced. It's about choosing to focus on your strengths and building a more positive and empowering self-image.
Precisely. And that shift in perspective can have a profound ripple effect on all areas of your life.
It's like they say, change your thoughts, change your life.
Exactly. And while it's not always easy to change those deeply ingrained beliefs, it is possible with the right tools, support, and a willingness to do the work.
And it sounds like Piece of Wellness provides that framework and support.
They do, and they seem to do it in a very practical, accessible way. One thing that really impressed me about their approach was their emphasis on tailoring their techniques to the individual. They don't believe in a one-size-fits-all approach.
That makes sense. We all have different needs, different learning styles, and different challenges.
Exactly. So instead of prescribing a rigid set of rules, they work collaboratively with their clients to identify the techniques and practices that resonate most deeply with them.
So it's a very personalized approach.
It is, and they seem to place a strong emphasis on building a trusting and supportive relationship with their clients. The article mentioned that they create a safe and non-judgmental space for people to explore their thoughts and feelings without fear of criticism.
That's so important, especially when you're dealing with sensitive issues like mental health and well-being. You need to feel safe and supported to do the deep work.
Absolutely. And that sense of safety and trust allows people to be more vulnerable and open to change. It allows them to let go of those defense mechanisms and really explore the root causes of their challenges.
Okay, so they provide a personalized approach, they foster a safe and supportive environment, and they offer a toolbox of practical techniques. But what about those moments when you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed and need a quick fix? Do they have any strategies for those moments when you need to shift your perspective on the fly?
They do. The article mentions several techniques they teach for managing stress and anxiety in the moment. One technique that stood out to me was grounding.
Grounding, what's that?
Grounding is a powerful technique for bringing yourself back to the present moment when you're feeling overwhelmed or anxious. It involves focusing on your senses, sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste to anchor yourself in the here and now.
Can you give me an example of a grounding exercise?
Absolutely. One simple but effective grounding technique is called the 5-4-3-2-1 method. You start by identifying 5 things you can see in your surroundings, then 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste.
So it's about consciously shifting your attention away from your thoughts and worries and redirecting it to your senses.
Precisely. By focusing on your senses, you're essentially disrupting those negative thought patterns and calming down your nervous system.
That's so cool. I love that it's something you can do anywhere, anytime.
Exactly. It's a simple yet powerful tool that anyone can use to manage stress and anxiety in the moment.
Okay, so we've talked about grounding, cognitive reframing, journaling, visualization, belief exploration, affirmations. It sounds like Piece of Wellness offers a really comprehensive toolbox of techniques for cultivating mental well-being.
Yeah.
But what about the bigger picture? How do they see their work impacting the workplace as a whole?
That's a great question. The article touched on their belief that by empowering individuals to manage their own mental well-being, they can create a ripple effect that positively impacts the entire workplace culture.
So it's not just about fixing individuals. It's about creating a healthier and more supportive environment for everyone.
Precisely. They argue that when employees feel supported and empowered to prioritize their mental health, it leads to increased productivity, creativity, and job satisfaction.
That makes sense. It's hard to do your best work when you're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, or burnt out.
Exactly. And they also highlight the importance of creating a workplace culture where mental health is destigmatized and employees feel comfortable seeking help when they need it.
It's about normalizing the conversation around mental health and creating a space where people feel safe and supported to talk about their struggles.
Absolutely. They believe that by breaking down the stigma surrounding mental health, they can create a more compassionate and supportive workplace environment for everyone.
I love that. It's about moving beyond the old paradigm of leave your problems at the door and creating a workplace where people feel seen, heard, and supported, both personally and professionally.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our mental well-being is just as important as our physical health, and that by prioritizing both, we create a more productive, fulfilling, and compassionate workplace culture.
I love that. So we've talked about the individual benefits of Piece of Wellness's approach, but it sounds like they're also really passionate about creating positive change at a systemic level.
Absolutely. They see their work as contributing to a larger movement toward prioritizing mental health and well-being in all aspects of life, including the workplace.
And that's something I think we can all get behind. But I'm curious to hear your perspective. What stood out to you the most from this deep dive? What are you taking away from this conversation?
You know, what really struck me was the simplicity of their message. It's not about complicated theories or jargon-filled techniques. It's about empowering people with practical tools and a deeper understanding of how their minds work.
I love that. It's about demystifying mental well-being and making it accessible to everyone.
Exactly. They're taking something that can often feel overwhelming or intimidating and breaking it down into manageable steps that anyone can follow.
And they're doing it with a sense of compassion and understanding that feels really refreshing.
Absolutely. They seem to genuinely care about helping people create more fulfilling and meaningful lives, both at work and beyond.
I'm curious, though. The article focused on Peace of Wellness's approach to mental wellness, but I'm wondering what other perspectives are out there. Are there any contrasting viewpoints or alternative approaches that we should be aware of?
That's an excellent question, and it's always important to consider multiple perspectives when exploring a topic as nuanced as mental well-being. While this article provided a great overview of Peace of Wellness's approach, there are indeed other schools of thought and practices that offer valuable insights.
Can you give me an example? I'm curious to explore those different perspectives.
Absolutely. One perspective that comes to mind is the mindfulness-based approach to mental well-being.
Mindfulness. I've heard that term thrown around a lot, but I'm not entirely sure what it means.
Essentially, mindfulness is about paying attention to the present moment without judgment. It's about observing your thoughts, feelings, and sensations without getting swept away by them.
So instead of getting caught up in your head, worrying about the past, or stressing about the future, you're focusing on what's happening right here, right now.
Exactly. And the idea is that by practicing mindfulness, you can develop a greater sense of awareness, acceptance, and inner peace.
That sounds lovely. But how do you actually practice mindfulness? Is it like meditation?
Meditation is certainly one way to cultivate mindfulness, but it can also be practiced in everyday life. For example, you can practice mindful eating by paying attention to the taste, texture, and aroma of your food. Or you can practice mindful walking by noticing the sensations of your feet on the ground and the sights and sounds around you.
So it's about bringing a heightened sense of awareness to everyday activities.
Precisely. And the more you practice mindfulness, the more naturally it begins to permeate all areas of your life.
I can see how that would be helpful for managing stress and anxiety. Instead of letting your thoughts run wild, you're training your mind to stay present and grounded.
Exactly. And there's a growing body of research that supports the benefits of mindfulness for mental well-being. Studies have shown that mindfulness can help reduce stress, anxiety, depression, and even chronic pain.
That's amazing. So mindfulness is one alternative perspective. Are there any others you wanted to touch on?
Another approach that's gaining popularity is positive psychology.
Positive psychology. What is that exactly?
Essentially, positive psychology focuses on what makes people thrive. Instead of focusing on what's wrong with people, it looks at their strengths, virtues, and what brings them joy and fulfillment.
So it's about focusing on the good stuff. I like it already.
Exactly. And while it's important to address challenges and difficulties, positive psychology reminds us that we also need to nurture the positive aspects of our lives to cultivate true well-being.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about creating a more balanced perspective, acknowledging both the good and the bad.
Precisely. And positive psychology offers a variety of tools and techniques for cultivating positive emotions, building resilience, and enhancing our overall sense of well-being.
Like what? Can you give me an example of a positive psychology technique?
One popular technique is called gratitude journaling.
Gratitude journaling. What's that?
It's a simple but powerful practice of writing down things you're grateful for each day. It could be as simple as a sunny day, a delicious meal, or a kind word from a friend.
So it's about actively focusing on the good things in your life, no matter how small.
Exactly. And research has shown that practicing gratitude can have a significant impact on our happiness and well-being. It helps us shift our perspective from a place of lack to a place of abundance and appreciation.
I love that. It's like they say, count your blessings. Okay, so we've talked about mindfulness, positive psychology. Any other perspectives we should consider?
Well, one more perspective I'd like to mention is the importance of social connection and support.
That's a good one. We're social creatures by nature, and having strong social connections is crucial for our mental and emotional well-being.
Absolutely. And while many of the techniques we've discussed focus on individual practices, it's important to remember that we don't exist in a vacuum. Having a supportive network of friends, family, and colleagues can make a world of difference when we're facing challenges or just need a listening ear.
And it's not just about receiving support, it's about giving it too. Helping others, volunteering, or simply being there for someone in need can be incredibly fulfilling to contribute to our own sense of purpose and well-being.
Exactly. So while individual practices like mindfulness and cognitive reframing are incredibly valuable, it's important to remember that social connection and support play a vital role in our overall mental well-being as well.
That's such an important reminder. We can't do it all alone. We need each other.
Absolutely. We thrive in connection with others. And by cultivating strong, supportive relationships, we create a more resilient and compassionate world for ourselves and for future generations.
I love that message. So we've covered a lot of ground here today. We've delved into Peace of Wellness's approach, explored alternative perspectives, and emphasized the importance of social connection. But I'm curious to hear from our listeners what resonated with you the most. What are your biggest takeaways?
And what are you curious to explore further? We'd love to hear your thoughts and continue this conversation.
You know, it's funny. We often think about mental wellness as this big, daunting thing. But what I'm hearing from you and from this article is that it's really about those small, everyday choices.
Absolutely. It's about the thoughts we choose to focus on, the words we use to talk to ourselves, the way we respond to challenges. Those small moments, those seemingly insignificant choices, can add up to create a profound impact on our overall well-being.
It's like that quote, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." We don't have to overhaul our entire lives overnight. We can start by making small, incremental changes that feel manageable and sustainable.
Exactly. And those small changes can lead to big results over time. It's like building any new habit. Consistency and commitment are key.
And it sounds like Peace of Wellness provides that support and guidance to help people stay consistent and committed to their mental well-being journey.
They do. And they offer a variety of resources and support systems to help people stay on track, including group workshops, online courses, and individual coaching sessions.
So they're not just giving you the tools and then saying, good luck, you're on your own. They're there to support you every step of the way.
Exactly. They seem to understand that change can be challenging, and they're committed to providing their clients with the ongoing support and accountability they need to succeed.
That's so important. It's like having a personal trainer for your mind. Someone to motivate you, challenge you, and celebrate your progress.
What a great analogy. And just like a personal trainer helps you build physical strength and endurance, Peace of Wellness can help you build mental resilience, emotional intelligence, and a deeper sense of self-awareness.
I love that. It's like they're providing a roadmap for navigating the inner workings of our minds, helping us identify our strengths, challenge our limiting beliefs, and ultimately create the lives we truly desire.
And who wouldn't want a roadmap for that?
Seriously. Especially in today's world where stress and uncertainty are so prevalent, having those navigational tools feels more essential than ever.
Absolutely. And the more we invest in our mental well-being, the more equipped we are to handle whatever life throws at us at work, in our relationships, and in our personal lives.
It's like that old saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. We can't show up fully for others, for our work, or even for ourselves if we're running on empty.
So true. Prioritizing our mental well-being isn't selfish. It's essential for living a fulfilling and meaningful life.
And it's something we can all benefit from, no matter where we are on our journeys. Whether we're struggling with a specific challenge, looking for ways to manage stress, or simply wanting to cultivate a more positive and fulfilling life, there's something for everyone in this conversation.
Absolutely. And I think the key takeaway here is that we have more power than we often realize to shape our thoughts, our feelings, and ultimately our experiences.
It's about taking back control of our minds and choosing to create a more empowered and fulfilling reality.
Exactly. And that's an incredibly empowering message.
It is. And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure exploring this topic with you.
Likewise. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey. Remember, mental well-being is an ongoing process, not a destination. Be kind to yourself, celebrate your progress, and never underestimate the power of your own mind.